I'd like to introduce Dr. Sheila Kanani, planetary physicist. I think that's her title. She's a science presenter.
Norman, we can't hear you.
Science presenter, school physics teacher, and plus. There must be about 30 different things she's done on the list that I've got. So I think it's best for me just to pass over to Sheila and let her tell you all the things that she does do. Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you. I just want to apologise before I start because I didn't bring the correct technology. So I've got my laptop with pictures on that I can pass around afterwards. But I'll just talk to you for the time being, and you can have a look at the pictures. Hopefully nothing will be lost by me talking, because I can talk for England. So thank you for inviting me here today. I'm like Norman introduced me, I'm a planetary scientist, and I currently work for the Royal Astronomical Society. So we're based in central London. And I'm just going to go through a bit of my background and a bit of what the RAS do. So the RAS are a learned society. Our patron is the Queen. We were formed almost 200 years ago in 1820, so we've got quite an exciting centenary, bicentenary coming up in 5 years' time. Like I said, we're based in central London, but we are an international society, so we've got members all across the world. Our first president was a scientist called William Herschel, who some of you may have heard about. And our motto is that we should observe anything that has light, whether it's reflected or whether it makes its own light, so stars, planets, moons, etc. Our current president is a professor called Martin Barstow, who's based in Leicester University, and the presidency changes every 2 years, probably similar to the Rotary Club. And things haven't really changed since 1820. The structure of the society is very similar to what it was, probably because it's such a grand old society and we don't like change. So I mentioned quickly our memberships. What we do is call our members fellows. I think, is that the same as the Rotary fellows? Yeah. They're primarily professional academics, people that work in university, but we are branching out to teachers, undergraduates and some student applications as well. We have almost 4,000 members across the globe. The majority are in the UK, so we've got about 3,000 in the UK. And we've just done a membership survey because we've had members for many, many years, but we didn't really know the demographic. And we found out about 20% are female, the majority are in the UK, and we've got all kinds of statistics about our membership now because it's getting quite interesting to see where they come from. We did historically have free membership for people over a certain age, so we do skew towards the older population, but we're trying to attract younger people into the Royal Astronomical Society as well. The central London premises are at Burlington House, which is on Piccadilly. It's opposite Fortnum and Mason, if you ever go down there. And if you are a member of our society, you can use the premises completely for free. It's a very grand old building. We've been resident there since about 1857, and I think we pay something like £1 a month for rent, which is lovely, and hopefully that won't change over the coming years. I think the idea behind that is to keep the learned societies in the building so that it doesn't turn into a McDonald's or something like that, which would be a bit of an eyesore. So if you are a fellow, you can come down to our building. We have public lectures once a month. We have the Friends of the RAS Society that also do lectures and have other activities that you will be part of. We've got some really good facilities. So we have a lecture theatre that holds over 100 people. We have meeting rooms, we have a library, and the library is quite exciting. So it's one of the sort of very old-fashioned libraries with the wooden balcony around the top and the sliding ladder, and people think, well, maybe there's a secret passageway somewhere behind the books, so I haven't found it yet. The library contains some really historic volumes, and at the moment we do have almost £9 million worth of historic texts within our building. They are first editions written by people like Newton and Galileo, and we also have artefacts as well. One of the most famous is, apparently, it's part of the tree that Newton sat under when the apple fell on his head and he discovered gravity. So that's in a glass box in the Society as well. So if you ever fancy coming down to have a look at some of these things, do let us know, and we can get them out of the archives for you. What else do I want to say about the building? Well, we use it for meetings, scientific meetings. Fellows can use all those facilities for free. So they do come along and organise scientific meetings and sometimes social events at the premises in central London. The other things we do are, well, generally we support academics. We're kind of like an umbrella organisation for all the academics in astronomy and geophysics across the globe, primarily in the UK. So we support them in a number of different ways. We publish research journals and magazines, so of notable data and results and events that have happened in space in the last years or so. So that's one of the biggest things. We only have about 20 members of staff, even though we have over 4,000 members, well, almost 4,000 members, sorry. And probably half these staff are down to editors for the journals that we publish. So we are sort of university academically quite renowned for publishing these journals. We recognise outstanding achievements within the community, so there are medals that people can win annually. Some of them are quite prolific, and we've had all kinds of winners across the years. Their awards are like Lifetime Achievement Awards, Best PhD Thesis Awards. We have a teacher award for a teacher in the UK that goes above and beyond the sort of teaching requirements of a science teacher. I've already mentioned the library, which is one of our best assets really, and people can come and use the library for whatever they want really, even if it's just a nice quiet place to sit and do some research, or if they want to sort of just feel immersed in astronomy and geophysics or something like that. We support education throughout the UK and internationally. We have various pots of money towards different things, and education is one of our key things. And we represent the UK internationally in the world of astronomy and geophysics. We also hold a conference, an annual conference, which is the biggest British conference for astronomers and geophysics. So it generally moves around to different universities each year, so we're not kind of London-centric or anything like that. This year it was held in Llandudno in North Wales, and it was actually at a conference centre. So we did all the organisation, which was quite exciting, seeing it happening, but it was a very busy time. We had over 500 astronomers coming to that meeting, and it was a week long, and there were lectures and there were some public events, and we had like Lord Martin Rees come down to talk and things like that. So my role at the RAS is a new one. I've only been there since September. So one of the things the RAS wants to concentrate on more fully is education. So and that's actually in part of the laws of the society, is to look at education and the promotion of the study of physics, astronomy and related sciences. But until September, there was no one there working there who was going to do that, so it didn't really happen. So I came along. So my background is research. It all began when I was 13, which was quite a long time ago. And I watched the film Apollo 13 based on the real events. The film's got Tom Hanks in. And I watched that film and I thought, I really want to be an astronaut. And that's how it all started. So I went to my local library and read about how to become an astronaut. And there were two ways. Go into the military and become a fighter pilot or something like that, or academic. So I read about astronauts that had gone down the academic path, and sort of got really interested in Michael Foale, who's half British, half American astronaut, who flew mostly in the 90s. And he got into became an astronaut by having a PhD in astrophysics. So when I was 13, I decided that's what I needed to do, and I managed to get there through a variety of paths, really. Got my astrophysics PhD in 2012. So my undergraduate's physics with astrophysics, and then my planetary science PhD was all about Cassini, which is one of the American flagship missions to Saturn, and it's been up at orbiting Saturn looking at the planet and the rings and the moons for the last 10 years, which is interesting because Saturn has undergone a season change, and that's the first time we've ever stayed at a different planetary system long enough to see the seasonal changes. And from that, we saw some quite interesting occurrences. For example, different weather patterns on some of the moons, which we couldn't have imagined would be the case before Cassini went up. So, yeah, my background as a research scientist. When I was doing research, I really enjoyed it. But it's a funny thing because it's very, very small, like you're looking at very small details of a very, very big picture, which I enjoyed, but I preferred telling people about the big picture. I got very excited when I was telling people about Saturn and the rings, but not necessarily doing the data analysis. So I thought, well, what kind of career could I carry on with that could allow me to talk about physics and astronomy rather than doing the research? And nowadays there's a big push in outreach and education. So I went and became a secondary school teacher for a few years, and I was talking about physics every day to hundreds of children, and some of them even thought I'd already been into space, but unfortunately that's not the case. And that was up in Lancashire, so it was a very different background to what I'd had, and it was really nice to engage those students into astronomy and physics through being a teacher. During that time, the job at the RAS was advertised, and they were looking for someone with a PhD in physics and teaching qualifications. So I thought that's the perfect job for me, and luckily enough I applied for it and got the job. So since September, I've been the Education Outreach and Diversity Officer at the RAF. So in terms of outreach, we do the press and media. So whenever there's something interesting up in space or Earth, Earth and space related, the BBC and the ITV and Sky TV, they ring us up and say, we need someone for BBC News tonight, can you come along? And my boss is actually the press manager, but since having a girl on the team, often BBC ring up and say, oh, we'd like a female scientist. So I've stolen a lot of his jobs just because they want a female scientist on the TV. We do public talks, we do science festivals, music festivals, all kinds of outreach and public engagement. If there's something interesting happening in, for example, in March there was a solar eclipse. So we had an event where we had almost 1,000 people in Regent's Park trying to watch the eclipse, and the weather was like this, so we saw nothing. But it's nice to engage with the public now and again. In terms of education, I go into schools and do talks and workshops. We have visits to the RAS from school, all ages of school children. I work very closely with the Institute of Physics, the UK Space Agency and other organisations on education and education policy. So we're always talking about the curriculum and the astronomy GCSE curriculum and how we have to keep that current and those kinds of things. And in terms of diversity, it's a lot of training and organisation of different things, making sure that we are outward looking and we show that we are thinking about things like diversity. There's a massive lack of women in physics and astronomy, but that's not the only lack. Now we're looking at people from different backgrounds, people from different ethnic backgrounds, as well as social mobility backgrounds as well. So diversity is quite a current issue in astronomy and physics. Now, one of our biggest projects this year, in the run-up to our 200th anniversary, is our Sky and Earth RAS 200 project. So last year, when the accountant and the treasurer were balancing the books, they realised that we have an extra reserve of £1 million, as you do. I love that as well. And the RAS pledged, rather than just spending that on expenses, etc., to give that out to different organisations for brand new public engagement projects. So we started by scouring the UK, talking about the RAS 200 project. The idea being that we would give £100,000 to 10 different groups for brand new astronomy-related public engagement and outreach projects that weren't necessarily the norm, that weren't necessarily people that we'd worked with before. So we talked to charities, we talked to organisations like the police, the National Trust, the Women's Institute, and we had our first round of applications that were awarded, that have just been awarded. So we've got 5 winners so far, and then next year we're going to do another 5 winners. So if anyone's interested in being given £100,000, then do let me know, because I can give you the details of that application form. So the winners on this round, we've actually got 6 winners. We've got one meta project. So the 5 main winners, each getting 100,000, are working with the National Space Centre. They're going to formulate a brand new planetarium show celebrating Holst's the Planets, because it's actually the centenary of that next year. And so the idea being that you go and watch this planetarium show, but at the same time you are immersed in the music being played live by maybe the Leicester Symphony Orchestra, or maybe even the National Symphony Orchestra if it does roll out to national. And we'll be working with the WEA, which is the Workers' Education Association. So they tend to work with mature students, people that didn't get the chance first time around, and making new after work and sort of long distance astronomy courses for mature students. Working with the Prince's Trust, taking children who can't be educated in mainstream education for one reason or another on residentials across the UK where they learn about astronomy. So those kids that don't necessarily engage with science in school or find it hard to, we've realised that actually if you take them out into the world and do more hands-on activities, they learn astronomy, but at the same time they're getting into science, which is really important. We've also given 100,000 to the Tedford, which is a cultural festival in Wales. It goes all the way around Wales, and that was just launched last week as well. So we're trying to bridge the gap between sort of culture and science and art and everything. So you can see these projects are quite new. And then another of the winners was the Care for Carers organisation, which is up in Scotland. And this is they work with young people who are carers. So these young people don't really get much respite. So again, long weekends or residentials where whoever they care for has got someone else, and these young people can come out and meet other people and have astronomy courses and stargazing parties and things like that. And then we're also working with the National Autistic Society because we've realised, or they've realised, they came to us and told us that people with autism have a natural affinity with physics and maths and those kinds of subjects. So if we work with them, they can make all our resources really accessible for people with autism. And that's another group of people that we haven't really worked with before, so it's very exciting that we are able to encounter them. And we just don't know who we might find. You know, there might be the next Galileo or the next Einstein in the group of people that we're now working with, and it's not necessarily the ones that get to go to university straight away or get to do a PhD without any hassle. So in terms of the RAS 200 project, those are the winners this year, but early next year, sort of February time, we will be launching again so that we can award a further £500,000 to 5 new groups. So do keep an eye out for that if you've got any good ideas. The reason that this is also important is because we want to get the next generation interested in science, technology, engineering and maths. We live in a technological era, you know, everyone's got smartphones and use GPS and all those things, but there's a massive shortfall in the UK of students now doing those subjects, and we don't want to get left behind in the world really. So if we can get people interested in astronomy, that is a hook to getting interested in those STEM subjects. There's all kinds of careers you can do if you have a background in physics, astronomy, geophysics. We've got our first British astronaut going up in December now, sorry, Tim Peake. And that is, yeah, we've had Helen Sharman and we've had other part British people going into space, but Tim Peake is the first actual British astronaut going up with the backing from the UK Space Agency. So if we can get more people interested in science and technology, the space industry in the UK is just going to flourish. In fact, it was one of the few industries during the recession that didn't have the recession didn't have an impact on it. It's been growing continuously, and there's hundreds of thousands of jobs now in the UK space sector, and the space sector bring in about, let me have a look at my figure, 9.1 billion for the economy each year, so it's a massive industry. So we really need to push it. So that's why I'm kind of preaching about space and astronomy, and it's such a fantastic hook. It got me into doing physics back when I was a young teenager.
Thunder.
See, I could explain thunder with physics. So everything's physics, which is why I love it, but space particularly. So yeah, if you're interested in anything we do, or if you want to come down to the RAS to visit us, please do. I can put out my email address and things like that, and I'm still here for any questions as well. So thank you.
Thank you. We've got time for some questions. Dennis.
First of all, may I say, congratulate you on all your achievements. As such a young person, for what you've achieved is truly remarkable. What I'd like to ask is, what sort of impact or response have you had from youngsters who you've been to see towards coming into this interest?
So it's really difficult actually getting people interested, because the minute you start talking about physics, they immediately think it's boring, or it's too hard, or there's too much maths in it and they can't do maths, so they can't do physics. So that's why we're really pushing the astronomy side of things and showing people how interesting astronomy is, and using that as the kind of focus. And before they know it, they're doing the maths and they're doing the physics, but it's all, glossed over with pretty pictures of different galaxies, or talk about landing on Mars and things like that. So that's how we're trying to tackle it. There's a massive shortfall of physics teachers in the UK as well, so it's nice to be able to go into schools and talk about subjects like physics and space that maybe the teacher who teaches it isn't very comfortable with, because actually they're a biology teacher just stepping into the shoes. So we're just, it's a very difficult battle, but small chunks at a time hopefully will be the way forward. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Sheila, what I wanted to ask you is, how exactly are you funded and by whom? That's the first one. And the other one was, are you personally specifically on a particular subject or just general? Okay,
so the RAS is all funded by the fellows. We're not government funded or anything like that. So there's different rates of fellowship for, if you're an academic, or if you're part-time, or if you're retired, or if you're an undergraduate. And they pay on a yearly subscription, and that's where that's where the majority of our money comes from. We do sometimes get people donating money, maybe in their will or something like that, that we do get big blocks of money from, but generally it's from the membership. And what was the second question? Sorry.
What are you personally?
So my particular background, and I just kind of fell into it, is planetary science. So because my PhD was about the Cassini mission and Saturn, that's my favourite planet. If I had to, be biased towards one other than the Earth, of course. So the reason I really like planetary science is because when you talk about the Big Bang or cosmology or the universe even, it's very, very difficult to visualise. But the planets in our solar system, even though we haven't physically, humans haven't been to most of them, we can send spacecraft, we can land rovers on Mars, we can take pictures of Pluto, comets and things like that, which makes it a lot more real and a lot more accessible for most people. So planetary science and the solar system is my main area, but I'm able to talk at a certain level on most of astronomy and geophysics.
Very interesting, fascinating talk. Can I ask if you've had any connection with technical colleges? As I say, that there used to run a technical college some years ago.
Yeah.
There's lots of people in technical colleges interested in this kind of work.
Yeah. So we do try and work with technical colleges, and there's been a few new university technical colleges that have started in the last few years. So we do try and work with them. We don't offer we sort of offer work experience ourselves, but we kind of more act like a broker between research scientists in universities and students to help them get the work experience that they're looking for. A couple of space studio schools have popped up. There's one in Oxford and there's one in, I think, West London, opening in September. So again, we're going to work very closely with them. The idea behind those are for 14 to 18-year-olds, they do their GCSEs and their A-levels, but they have a big impact they work very closely with industry. And they also, everything they do has a space focus. So they do all their GCSEs, but everything's got a space focus, so we work quite closely with those. With the diversity work that I do, I try and go more to state schools, because generally private schools have more opportunities, more time in the timetable for enrichment. So I do try and go to state schools and spread the word like that instead. And the other thing I didn't say that I'm starting in September is, I mentioned our big old building that you can use when you want, but often it's empty, except for the offices. So I'm starting up a GCSE astronomy course for children in the central London area. There's a surprising amount of schools in central London. So they come after school from 4 till 5, and they learn the topics for GCSE astronomy, and through the RAS they'll be able to get their GCSE in 2 years' time, and that's completely free. And again, it's opportunities for young people that don't necessarily have them.
Can I ask you a bit more about this GCSE for astronomy? How long has it been going on for? I never knew there was such a thing.
It's been going on since at least 2009, if not longer than that. It's gone through one change, with the different government, and the curriculum shifted slightly. The idea behind the GCSE astronomy is that it's not instead of doing sciences, it's an enhancement GCSE, and it's kind of like a stepping stone. If you know you're interested in astronomy and you want to do it at university, it gives you a few more skills than physics GCSE would give you. And the topics are all, there's stars, the universe, galaxies, all the planets in the solar system, and that's about 70% or 80% of the course. And the rest of the course is all practical astronomy. So we take the kids, or the adults maybe, out, use telescopes, binoculars, plan observational experiments. They always get rained off, so then you have to plan again. We use also, there's a few different telescopes run by the UK that are for public use. So there's the National Schools Observatory and there's the Forks Telescope. They're both in Tenerife, both based in Tenerife, but you can use them remotely from the UK, so you can request, can you point the telescope at the moon next month because I want to count the craters on it or something. Yeah. And if your request gets through, then you'll get sent, next month you'll get sent these pictures that you've requested. So we're going to try and use those with the young people as well. And yeah, it's a really good course. I think there's about 5,000 people that do it in the UK. So it's not a massive turnout, but it's enough to keep the GCSE running.
Have you got the syllabus online so somebody curious?
Yeah. So it's run by EdXL. Right. So there's lots of different, obviously there's lots of different examining boards, but EdXL are the only ones that do the astronomy. So if you just search for EdXL GCSE astronomy, it will come up. Yeah, and it overlaps a bit with the physics, but it's a standalone as well. And it's a lot of fun as well if you're interested in it. And it looks good if you're applying for astrophysics at university and you've done that as well as the sciences.
Take the last one.
Quite interesting. Does your organisation not have lectures?
Yeah.
Which the general public can...
We do, yeah.
Does that not encourage people to somehow join hands with you and go down the path? I'll tell you why I say that. It's not comparative. I have belonged to the Royal Geographical Society ever since I came to this country. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a geographer. Yeah. And they do take non-professionals of their discipline into their fold. Yeah. And I have seen a phenomenal number of young people attending the lectures over the years.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have a public lecture series. It's once a month on a Tuesday. And they are well attended, but until last year, they only ran at lunchtime, which meant that they could only really be attended by people working in central London or retired folk, and the kind of age ranges that aren't, don't encompass the younger people. We have started last year repeating, so the poor person who's doing the lecture does one at lunchtime and then repeats it from 6 till 7 in the evening. And they start again in October this year. They run from October till May. So we are starting to get different people coming along in the evenings, families and A-level students, etc., which is fantastic. We advertise in Time Out and things, so we are aware that we need to kind of push it for different people in the evenings. They haven't been as well attended so far. We've only run the evening courses for 6 months or something, so we're living and learning as we go. And the way into the RAS, if you're not an academic, there's a programme called the Friends of the RAS, so it's a reduced rate membership where you can go to these public lectures and there are other things for the Friends of the RAS to do, and they're supposed to be for people that aren't astronomers but want to be more part of the RAS. The reason we have these different memberships is because we don't want to steal your money and then not give you anything. So the people that are full fellows get access to the journals and all the kind of academic things that would be useful, but wouldn't necessarily be useful for a young person. So that's why we have the different memberships, and we're not stealing anyone's money.
Advertise on Meetup.
Ron, would you like to do vote of thanks?
Yes, Mr. President. I'm extremely delighted to be asked to give the vote of thanks, because I think when I told most of the members, when asked, that I had somebody from the Royal Astronomical Society, the general reaction was, oh my God. But you proved to be only very, very knowledgeable, with an avalanche of information. But it's also been very exciting to get people's imagination in a very different light from normal. So the vote of thanks is very heartfelt, and thank you very much, as you will enjoy it.
Oh,
Thank you, Ron.